again and again. As the minutes pass, Charles begins to sweat. Is he in danger? This whole expedition is to punish a man who tried to assassinate his best friend. He eyes his courtiers. He feels them watching him, but when he looks, they look away. It is so hot. A page, drowsy from the long ride, drops a lance. It clangs when it hits the ground. "Traitors!" Charles shouts, drawing his blade. He rushes forward, hacking at his retinue. Stunned and unwilling to draw swords on their most Christian king, all the courtiers can do is wrestle him out of the saddle. But by the time they pin him to the ground, 5 men are dead. Charles stops struggling. His eyes roll back in coma. The courtiers exchange looks. The king is in the grip of madness. And soon, France will follow him.
This episode is brought to you by our lovely patrons over on Patreon, whose support directly helps make all of our extra history videos possible. Seriously, you are all the best. Thanks a million.
Before the miracles began, before the siege of Orleans, before the saints appeared to a peasant girl, France was a country cursed by God. And that began with King Charles the Beloved, or as he became known, Charles the Man. Because that first psychotic episode would not be the last for the French king. At times he was perfectly lucid, able to rule as he used to, but then he would slip, failing to recognize friends and family, not understanding that he was the King of France, instead insisting he was St. George, or wearing thick clothes with iron bands sewn in because he thought he was made of glass and might shatter his touch. And on occasion, he would run wild through the halls of his residence. Court officials had to brick up entrances to keep him inside. With Charles incapacitated and often confined, rule fell to a council of regents, overseen by Queen Isabel. And this wasn't actually the worst time for France. There had been a truce in the 100 Years' War, and the country was at peace. People were thinking about taxes, not armies. Because here's the thing, while Charles was unable to rule consistently, he wasn't dead. The crown hadn't passed to his sons. It was all about the council, and as councils will do, this one split into factions. Particularly as the older generation of council members died, leaving their seats to their children. 2 main groups emerged, the Armagnacs and the Burgundians, both led by men of the royal bloodline. The Armagnacs were led by the king's younger brother Louis, Duke of Orleans. Powerful, rich, and famous for his voracious pursuit of women. He was extremely close to the queen, suspiciously close, some said, even whispering that her 3rd son Charles was actually fathered by Louis. Economically, they wanted France to remain the traditional agricultural country that it was. On the other side were the Burgundians, led by the king's cousin, John the Fearless, Duke of Burgundy. The Burgundians held large parts of northeast France, where there was heavy English influence due to the invasions of the 100 Years' War, and they were tied economically to Britain via the textile trade. So perhaps, not surprisingly, they were interested in developing France along an